All right. So, did everybody see the two different extra credit opportunities on Slack?
Can you kind of like go?
so,
I saw them, but
so
like
no, you
I didn't
didn't.
see them, but like
All right. So we got two different things. So, first thing is this coming Sunday. And this is actually at my church. Well, the church I attend, not my church, but here in Mequon. It's a beautiful Savior. It's just on uh, Mequon Road. You turn right at Panera, and it's like 3 minutes down that road or something like that. Dr. Locklear is our guest speaker this week. So after the church service, then we go into our fellowship hall thing, and he's giving a presentation on the Doctrine of Creation. It's kind of his research area. How many of you have had the cosmogony class? Okay, so it's a required class for computer science majors, and kind of an interesting maybe history lesson with that is when I first came here, I came from an engineering background. Well, computer science engineering, but not a liberal artsy religious school background. And I thought it was absolutely stupid that we required our CS majors to take a class like cosmogony. Now, fast forward 11 years, I actually think it's like one of the coolest requirements we have. It's his research area. It's the science of creation. And what's really cool about the class is, even though obviously he's a Christian, so he has his personal beliefs, right, about it. He presents both sides. So you look at it from the perspective of science with evolution and all that stuff, and then you also look at the side with creation, and he makes very compelling but almost unbiased type of arguments for it. So it's I think it's a really cool class. Well, this is let's call it swaths of that compressed into like a 45-minute presentation. So it should be, I think, pretty entertaining, pretty interesting, and to sweeten the deal, it comes with lunch. So we have our church calls it Concordia Sunday. So we do this, I think, once per semester, where we effectively try to encourage Concordia students to come, and we have like a big potluck thing. And so I have no guarantees of what kind of food will be there, but there'll be plenty of food. Historically, we've done like big like egg bake things where you have like I don't know like 15 different pans of just eggs with stuff in it, like bacon and sausage and whatever. Other times it's been like a crazy potluck where people just bring whatever. But there should be plenty of food. So you get a free lunch out of this, let's say, or a late breakfast or brunch, I guess. But Dr. Locklear will be giving his talk. And the pastor at that church is also one of the teachers here. He teaches the Bible class, and that's Professor Hillenbrand. Phil Hillenbrand. Anybody have him in class? Don't like him, though, right?
I love him.
Kind of a dry... Man, I hate his Bible studies. Oh my gosh, he starts off every Bible study with like 15 minutes, like playing some stupid game, like reading like riddles. Oh my gosh, I like check out so quick. But he's a good friend. My wife and I are going to a show with him and his wife next Thursday. So we're good friends, but man, he's boring. So yeah, good luck with actually his sermons are better than they should be. I'm really selling this, right? Okay, but anyways. So, and we'll talk about the midterm exam here in a minute too. But so what I'll do is I'll give you if you come to the church service and stay for Dr. Locklear's thing and get the free food and stuff, I'll have a sign-up sheet. I'll give you 5% bonus on your midterm exam. Okay, which is going to be probably next Wednesday. We'll talk about that here in a minute. I haven't officially decided if it's Wednesday or Friday, but I think I'd like to get you the grades back before break than after break, mostly because I'm going to be gone during break and I won't necessarily be able to guarantee I'll have them done by that Monday. So I'm thinking Wednesday. So that's one extra credit opportunity. If you live here on campus or, I guess that's the offer I'll make. If you live here on campus and need a ride because you either don't have a car or aren't going to carpool with people, let me know. before, let's say, Saturday night, and because the school's on the way for me, so, and I have a decent sized car, I can fit like 8 people in it, so I can swing by and pick up folks and bring them to the church if that's helpful. It's not a big deal for me. It's on the way. So let me know that. So that'll give you a 5% bonus on the midterm.
So you want us to go to the service and for the service at 9 and then.
Well, yeah, that's the Christian worldview thing. Yeah. So that's bonus points for me too. That's right. Because when you fill out that thing, it says Christian worldview, then it's like, man, dude forced me to go to a church service. Doesn't get any more Christian than that, right?
And just as a reminder, the final can replace the midterm grade, but not vice versa.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So what he's referring to is that in here, if you bomb the midterm and you come back and do much better in the final exam, I'll replace your midterm with whatever you got in the final exam, but not the other way. So you can't ace the midterm and then coast and just put your name on the final and say, okay, I'm good. All right, so questions about that extra credit opportunity? All right, so that's this coming Sunday. And if you, let's see. Oh, I put the information about it up on Slack with the little blurb, so it has the address for the church. It's like 5 minutes from here. It's not a long trek or anything. The second extra credit opportunity is for Monday night. So this coming Monday, well, we have for those of you who are not aware, we have a Association of Computing Machinery group here on campus, ACM. Most computer science departments, universities have an ACM chapter, but let's call it 98% of ACM chapters are the men's or the mixed groups. Well, we're one of 2 in the state of Wisconsin that has an ACMW, a women's women in computer science group. So it's actually kind of cool. And we don't have a men's group. Actually, we're working on that. So I guess go women. So they've done a really, really good job with that group, and we are pretty active. So we have a meeting coming up on Monday night at 5 p.m. in this room. But beyond the meeting, it's a little robotics type thing. We're using this thing called Ozobots that are in there. You probably got an email from CUW all about it. So I encourage all of you to come to it. It's not just for women. I mean, the group is women-centric, but everybody's welcome. Men, children, whatever can come to this thing. We're going to have donuts and drinks. So I'm just going to bring just a whole bunch of donuts. So it should be about an hour, hour and a half, something like that. Play with these robots and things like that. But we really want to encourage promotion for the Grace group. So if you'll come to that, I'll give you another 5% on the midterm. So you can turn a 90 into 100 by coming to those two different things. Sound good? And you get free food at both of them. All right. So that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Non-students. I've invited folks at my church. I mean, this would even be appropriate for like kids to come and see the way the Ozobots work. I put a link in the thing on the email that came, but you create these little paths and the robots follow the paths and stuff. I mean, it's cool. So if you don't think it's that cool, eat donuts and listen to the group. But, I mean, one thing I want to encourage you to do is not just come to this one event, but also get involved with the group. I mean, the group does some neat stuff. Plus, it's a way to get kind of plugged in with the computer science community outside of Concordia. ACM is one of the 2 big groups. You have ACM and you have IEEE. Those are the like you've seen the IEEE thing before when you like look at, for instance, with Wi-Fi, you see like 802.11n or something like that. That's an IEEE number. So these are standards. ACM and IEEE are standard things across the world for computer science. So the fact that we have a chapter here is impressive. It's kind of a cool thing. So, I'm bribing you to come to one meeting with the hope that you become a member, show up to other meetings, be involved in the events and stuff like that. Your gender doesn't matter. Okay, just because if you're not female, you're still allowed to do it. I mean, if you happen to look around in computer science classes, females are almost always on the minority group, right? Okay, so we're trying to change that because technology is something that can apply to anyone. In fact, truth be told, most of my female students have been far brighter than my male students. I'm not even lying. It's typically been the case. Okay, so questions about either of those opportunities. So free 10% on your midterm. Having said that, the midterm will be next Wednesday. It'll be an in-class exam. There'll be about 10 questions on it. I'll go on Monday. What I'll do is I'll go through the slides and kind of say focus on this and focus on this, and so which is going to be the same thing I do when I write the exam. All right, when I write the exam, I'll just be going through my slides, picking out, coming up with questions on topics I deem to be important. So you'll get my first pass on that. So anything I say, this will probably be on the exam. Study that. Okay. Generally speaking, the exam is typically, let's say, half short answer essay, half programming. Worst case, that would be worst case from the programming side of things. Sometimes there's 6 short answer essays for programming, something like that. Obviously, the programming questions for many of you are going to be the tougher ones, right? I try to write the exam to not be a time crunch type situation. So the programming questions will be on the easier side with the idea of showing me that you've learned some stuff from your homework. So they're going to be significantly easier than your homework assignments have been because you don't have 3 or 4 hours to sit there and think about it. I want to see that you're capable of writing a simple for loop. I want to see that you're capable of writing a Boolean expression to test whether a couple of numbers or how they relate to each other, that kind of stuff. So I'm really trying to do a litmus test of what you've learned from the homework assignments rather than see if you can solve some crazy puzzle in 50 minutes. That make sense? Okay, we'll talk more about that on Monday, but that's kind of the nature of the exam. So half the exam, if you study for it, you should be able to get, all those points. The programming questions, if you can show me competence, you should at least be able to get most of the points on those questions, even if you don't get the exact correct answer. So everybody in here should be able to clear a 75 or something like that on the exam, as long as you've been doing your homework yourself and you study for the exam. Then you get a free 10 points, so we're all sitting somewhere, in the A range on the exam. Wouldn't that be nice? Certainly nice for me. I hate giving bad midterm grades, but all right. Questions, comments, concerns about that? Okay. So I do encourage you to take advantage of the 2 extra credit opportunities for multiple reasons. Benefit yourself, free food, plus I'd like to have good turnouts for both of them. So it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Okay, so let's talk about the homework assignment. Homework assignment for today was I think I have it in Adam, right? So it's to take a string in and convert that string to a list. Is that correct? All right, so we introduced lists at the end of class last time. On the board here. Okay, and we saw how we can append things to a list. So this is appending to the end of the list, correct? All right. So when we take a string in, and we'll go ahead and do it the backwards way that some folks said that they were running into some issues with initially. So we'll go ahead and we'll write our standard for loop for going through every element of a string, right? That's what we're going to do here. But we're going to go through it forwards, okay? So we'll say for C in S. Actually, have I done it that way before? I have or have not? Have not. Okay. So let's do our counter then. Okay, so for I in range 0 to length of S. So that's the way we've done it, right? Okay, because the other one's a for each loop. I'll show that to you here in a minute. We'll add that to our toolbox. It's not really new. It's just helpful sometimes. All right, so for I in range 0 to length of S, we need to go ahead and give ourselves a empty list. So we'll say list is, the empty list. That's a list with nothing in it. And each time through this loop, what we want to do is we want to append onto list the current character from our string. All right, so we'll say list append. The value we're going to append is S at bucket I. Okay, now notice that S, the syntax for our strings, kind of is a list syntax. So that kind of tells us underneath the hood, strings are probably implemented as lists. All right, so list append S at bucket I. So we'll take the current character and we'll append it to the list. When this is done, we'll go ahead and return our created list. And here we'll put an extra little space there to exaggerate that this return statement is not part of the for loop. All right, so we'll go through every element of our string. For each of those characters, we'll go ahead and append it onto the end of our list. So this is actually going to build our list accidentally backwards, right? All right, then we'll go ahead and return the list. So we should be able to see it out here. So let's give ourselves, let's go ahead and print out string to list of hello. And we want this to be the list, H-E-L-L-O. It's actually going to give us the list, O-L-L-E-H. All right, because of the way we built it. But let's look at this. A terminal open here. All right, that's from another class. Oh, that did build it in the correct way. So what were you talking about? This built it straight. This built it in the correct order.
Oh, no, okay,
We used
so 3 and 4 I in range, length of S, -1, -1,
Oh, you walked it backwards?
-1.
Yeah.
Why?
I was like,
So I was thinking you were telling me that I taught you how append works wrong.
yeah,
So append works the way I told you how it works.
oh, 100%, yeah, no, and so,
So you just chose to walk your string backwards and expected it to go into the list the right way?
it was, I mean, it worked,
It doesn't matter. It worked.
mistakes were made, you know what I'm saying, but I learned a lot from it, and I think,
Okay, so actually let's go down that path because I was going to show a little mistakes were made. You should be like on ESPN. Yeah, that like really sounds like when one of these guys is like pro a certain player or something like that is like making all sorts of excuses. It's like I remember back. Remember, do you know who Bobby Knight is?
no.
Okay, well he used to be a famous coach for Indiana, a basketball coach, and he's still around. He's in some funny commercials, but the guy had an anger management issue. All right, and in fact, the year that he got fired from, and Indiana was always like one of the top teams in college basketball. And this guy got fired when they were like number 2 in the country. So his own kid was on the team. He cracked his kid on the head with a chair during a game. Kid got out of line.
And that's why he was kicked off?
Huh?
Was that why he was kicked off? Or was that
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, the guy was always mad. He was throwing. If you look up videos of Bobby Knight, you'll find him throwing things on the court all over the place. He was like, do you know who John McEnroe is?
also no?
Also, my gosh. Well, he's a famous tennis player from years ago who also has. So he's been in movies. You've probably seen him. He's been in movies and stuff, being the angry guy. Like little cameos and things like that, because he had an anger management issue on the court. So I remember because Bobby Knight was very popular amongst the reporters at the time. So I remember back when they were trying to spin it, how hitting his own kid with a steel chair during a game was like, acceptable behavior. You reminded me of that. It was funny. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do your weird solution. All right, so this is the solution to the homework if you wanted to do it in the, I guess, logical, intelligent way. Yeah, normal way. Okay, he took the unorthodox approach. So that's the spin, right? On the unorthodox approach. Okay, so we'll start. We'll start at the length of S minus 1. all the way down to but not including -1, and we'll step by -1. So he wants to walk the string backwards, right? Okay. So for no good reason other than just to challenge himself. All right, so if we do this, now we're going through S from the end towards the beginning. We're still appending the crap the same way we were appending it before. So we should expect to get the same thing, but backwards.
Yes.
All right, so that's what he ran into. So now my interesting question is how did you fix it?
I went and I
Reverse.
Googled the reverse thing, or the reverse command in Python for lists. And then
Oh, see, yeah, I mean, it's okay you did that, but there really would have been a more respectable way of doing it.
which was making a new.
Well, I mean, didn't we spend some time last class writing a reverse?
We did.
Reverse
And,
string?
We talked about that, and then
Yeah,
Right?
we did, and then I went and I tried to like modify it, and I kept getting syntax.
Well, you don't have to modify it. I mean, you just have to do this. S is equal to reverse string of S. Hey, if you're gonna walk your string backwards, why not make your string backwards to begin with? Let's just reverse it. Okay, you're gonna be unorthodox here. Okay, we're gonna go backwards. Well, we better cue this guy up. We need to stage him correctly for this unorthodox approach. So we'll call our own function called reverse string. We'll pass it the string that we took in to get us the reverse version of that guy, because for some reason we're walking it backwards. All right, it's all day. And there's our hello. All right, so you did before you returned it here. Here, I'll just comment that out. So you did, what is it, list.reverse?
Yeah.
Is it like that or is it like that? I think it's like that. Like that? No.
Oh, that's not.
Or is it a... No, we just tried it for strings last class.
Oh, you can't. Okay, so like I ran into that too. You have to do list reverse outside of the for loop, and then print list.
Well, but when you say list reverse, is that how you wrote it?
Yeah.
Because this should reverse the list. Hold on. I think, let me see if this is the way it happens to work. Yeah, there we go. All right, so, that'd be an interesting question for class. So you actually had some purpose in what you did. Okay, so we see that lists know how to reverse themselves, so that might be of help to you. But notice that when I said list reverse like this, and then I returned list, it gave me the right answer. But when I said list reverse like this and tried to run it, it said none. Did not give me the right answer. This guy is a function, right? We've been writing functions. We wrote a function today, string to list. This happens to be a function that's built into Python, okay, that knows how to operate on lists. Why does returning the result of list.reverse give me a none, but saying list.reverse and then returning list, this won't run right because we have two different return statements here, but why does this guy give me the correct answer while this guy gives me none? Okay, we're kind of playing Sherlock Holmes here. We want to take the evidence into consideration. Why does this one work, but this one does not? Go ahead.
So, not sure if this is a thing that can be done in Python, but would it be like reverse isn't actually returning the list as reversed. It's actually going into the memory and being like, this goes here, that goes there, not really returning anything, but it's completed.
Okay, now, how confident are you in what you just said?
If this was C, I'd be very confident. Given that it's Python, not very.
Okay, so we have written functions that don't return values, haven't we? Haven't we written functions that just like print out the characters from a string? And they never returned anything. So why do you question at all whether or not you can have functions that don't return something in Python?
Pointer access.
No, but this isn't even a pointer. I mean, it's a pointer thing at the list level,
Right.
but we're allowed to have functions that don't return anything. So what you're suggesting is that this guy doesn't return anything. When I call the reverse function from a list, it must do stuff, but it doesn't give me an answer. I'm trying to return whatever answer he gives me. And since I'm getting a none out of it, he's giving me nothing. Here, there is no return. Okay, this would be the same thing as if I had a def stupid func that took no parameters, printed stupid, and then down here I tried to return. Let me get rid of this. Stupid func. So stupid func prints something, but it does not return something. So there's the value it printed. But notice that the value I got when I tried to return the result of stupid func gave me the same none as I got before. I wrote here a function that does something, but doesn't actually return anything. Does that make sense? So down here, when I tried to return list.reverse, I discovered that, as you pointed out, this guy doesn't return a value. He does something. He reverses that list up in memory. Okay? He does everything that we want him to do except give us the answer. Because we already have it. The answer is stored inside of this pointer called LST. So when we said list reverse here, then we said return list. We are relying on this function to go ahead and reverse the list, reverse it up in memory. From that point forward, list has now permanently been changed. And now we'll return the updated list. Does that make sense? This function does not return a value. It does something. It permanently reverses the elements of LST, but does not spit it out. Okay? It's like telling me to go put gas in the car. I run and put gas in the car, but I don't come back and hand you the car. Right? I just say it's done. You asked me to put gas in the car, I put gas in the car. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's kind of what's going on here. So it is something we do need to pay attention to, especially when we're using built-in functions, is built-in functions might do something different than we expected them to do. At the end of the day, we did expect this guy to reverse the list. But an important thing for us to remember here, though, is did we want this list? In this case, it didn't matter. But when you're using this in the future, did you actually want the list to be permanently changed? Or did you want to just get the temporary reverse of the list? You know, I want the reversed version of this list for the moment. But I don't want the original guy to be reversed. I'm going to use him again in the middle in a minute, and I need him to be in the order he used to be in. Does that make sense? With that in mind, this might be a very poor tool to use because it has side effect. We are permanently altering that list. Okay? So, in this case, since this function ends here, this is okay. Because at the end of this function, this LST variable loses scope. Okay, let's talk about scope for a few minutes. Okay, so we have this idea of something called variable scope. Okay, now scope is where a variable is accessible. That's it. That's all it means. Where a variable is accessible, where we're allowed to use that variable, where it has the value that we expected it to have. Because where we're allowed to access the variable becomes a kind of a blurry thing in loosely typed languages. Because in loosely typed languages, it's not incorrect. So let's go up here to our stupid thing. I can just print out A. Actually, let's see if that's changed in Python 3. I'll call my stupid func. Now, up here, my stupid func is taking in no parameters, and he's printing out an A. Now, how do we know that's not the string A? I don't have things around it, right? I don't have double quotes around it. I don't have single quotes around it. So it's not the char A. It's not the string A. So it's not either of those. What must it be? Must be a variable. And what's going to happen is at runtime, A is going to try to resolve to its value, right? Now, have I defined, I'm going to tell you everything I've highlighted there represents a scope. That's a local scope, and we'll talk more about it here in a second. But have we defined A anywhere in where I have highlighted? So what do we expect to get from the variable A? I mean, I'm not asking you to even guess what Python's going to do. I'm just saying in real life, if I haven't invented something yet, okay, I haven't created something yet, and I say, yeah, it's the value of this, we don't expect anything, right? It's like, well, that maybe even an error. Like, look, you're trying to use something, it doesn't exist. It's kind of like you're at home, you're making dinner, somebody says, get the steak out of the fridge, nobody bought steak, right? There is no steak in the fridge. Okay, he'd probably spin it, and isn't that commercial? I think it's an Alexa commercial. What's a good substitute for butter? And then they say olive oil, and then he doesn't have olive oil either. And it's like, what's a good substitute for olive oil? You would probably be the type person who just keeps spinning it and find a substitute for steak 10 times deep, right?
No pork's 100%.
So, now, if you talk to my dad, no, pork's a bottom feeder. Yeah.
Tastes pretty good, though.
Oh, yeah, hey, you don't have to convince me. I'm a huge bacon fan. In fact, here's a more Christian worldview. I used to be Jewish. I was born. My whole family is like Orthodox. I converted like 20 years ago, but
Little curls and stuff?
yeah, they do that. I never did that, but yeah. In fact, I was at my grandpa's funeral a couple years ago, and I have a picture of me in like full Jew mode. Yeah, I got the yarmulke on, the whole thing. But yeah, most of my family is it's like completely Orthodox. But I'm thinking, just hang outside of a synagogue with cooked bacon. Because, that's not kosher. You can't have bacon. That's a deal breaker. That is a deal breaker. So I'm with you. My dad won't touch it. But actually for him, he's Christian too now. But yeah, that's not a kosher thing. That's a bacon's or pork's bad for you thing. Yeah, that's actually a whole nother. So my dad's one of 7 brothers. And my dad's father was a big guy, and he died when he was 60. So this is years and years and years ago. So all the brothers, they would have this story that they would say that, oh, the Littman men die when they don't make it past their 60th birthday. We're just not long-lived people, the men. Kind of jokingly, right? He's my dad's oldest brother. Died on his 60th birthday. All the other brothers went on health kicks. They are all, so my dad now is 60, let's see, 67. He's 66 now. He'll be 67 in October. So, so from his perspective, he's on borrowed time. Yeah, it's just, I mean, so, yeah. I'm just saying, kind of my family, well, everybody's family's messed up to some extent, right?
Yeah.
We all have the stories. But yeah, bacon's an important part of my life. And if you want, go to Costco. Costco has, it's the only place in town that has pork belly. You know what pork belly is?
No.
Well, first of all, did you know that bacon is actually slices of pork gut? Yeah, they cut off the pig's fat stomach, not its stomach organ, but the belly, and they smoke it and they slice it. That's what bacon is. That's what we love. Yeah, but pork belly, when they call it pork belly, they're not curing it, but it's cut like super thick, like a steak.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I put that thing on the grill. Yeah,
Are we supposed to be talking about programming?
this is programming. How is this not programming?
Bacon is everything.
Bacon is everything. All right.
Too close to lunch.
Well, I know. We're just kind of getting ready for lunch. All right. So we expect this guy to be I don't even know how we got on that segue. But we expect this guy to be a variable. But it's a variable we didn't give a value to. Oh, yeah. It's steak in the fridge. That's how we got there. Okay. So when we come down here and we call stupid func, this guy right here, what are we actually expecting to print out? We never gave a value to A. Now, this is different than you would have gotten in an older version of Python. In this case, it actually says, look, here's a variable A. You never define this guy. Now, that's actually difficult. That error message is difficult to produce in a loosely typed language because you're running this thing through an interpreter. All right, so when it gets to this line, depending on how the interpreter runs through here, it might not necessarily know that you don't have a variable named A. So historically, sometimes you would get it to print out none. It's like, look, you want a variable named A? Fine, we'll go ahead and create it for you right now. It has nothing in it, value's none. So whenever you see none, that means nothing. There's nothing in there, it's empty. Okay, that's not the string none, that's the value nothing. All right, so when we talk about variable scope, that's where a variable is accessible. And you want to think about this. Let me draw a picture here. We'll just kind of squeeze this guy up here to give me some space. All right, so we're going to think that what we call our program right now. Eventually, it's going to get a little bit more complex than this, but for right now, we just have this big text file, right? So anything that doesn't live within one of our functions. So anything that's the left justified, right? All the way over to the left, okay, not indented underneath something, is part of the global scope. So for instance, if we declare a variable A is equal to 5, they're at the global level. That guy is accessible anywhere inside of the global scope. And let me give you some context for this. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create another scope. Let's give him a different color. So we'll go ahead and we'll indent this guy. We'll indent that just so we kind of see it as its own scope. So this is one of our functions. So we can have another function below there. All those functions live independently inside of our global scope. So in our global scope, we've defined a variable named A and set it equal to 5. Then we get to this function. Now, assuming we had called this function, so we'll call this guy myfunc. And this is what myfunc will do. And then down here, when we call this stuff, we'll go ahead and call myfunc, and then we'll call print A. So myfunc is defined right here. We call it here. So when we call myfunc defines a variable named A, and it prints out A. A variable always resolves to its most local definition. So A right here will boil down to this 7. So it's going to print out a 7. All right. Now, when myfunc ends, when this function is done running, okay, and we come back to here, so we've finished that line. So now we're sitting at the very next line of code here. When I get to there and I say print A will resolve to its most local definition. Now, its most local definition is not this variable A that was defined inside of this function it's now gone. That function was called, but now it's gone. So when it ended, all the variables it had defined are disappear. Okay? So we revert back to this global A. So when I print out A here, I'll get the 5. That makes sense? Now what's nice about that is we don't have to worry about these two variables conflicting with each other. We're allowed to have a variable inside of myfunc named A, even though I might have a more global variable named A. Because sometimes, we want to have, A doesn't mean that much, but we've seen us use variables like answer multiple times, right? Okay, so with that in mind, it might be handy for us to be able to have multiple variables inside of our entire program named answer that are distinct from each other. And what makes them distinct is the fact that they are in their own scopes. That makes sense? So every single function we write comes with its own scope. So this guy has a scope that lives and dies when that function was called. This guy has a scope that lives and dies when that function is called. This guy has a scope that lives and dies when that function is called. This top level guy has a scope that lives and dies when our program finishes. That's the way we should look at it right now. Later on, when we start writing objects, our own objects, we might have our code split across multiple files. We could basically get one more level of scope. Okay, that global scope goes across our multiple, the global scope sticks within a single file, which is going to be related to a single object in Python. We don't need to get into that too much right now, but we'll end up adding one more layer to this. But for right now, this is kind of how scopes work. Questions about this?
Can you share, or is that what you use with object? Share, share A1 with another function. A equals 1 and share.
Oh, sure. So let's kind of go out here. Let's do it for real. That's how you would send it with a parameter.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and print out A. So now I can say A is equal to 7, and then I'll go ahead and pass in A here, and it'll print out a 7. But I could also have said C is equal to 7. I'll pass in a C here. It'll still print in a 7. Because C will boil down to its value. So by me putting a C there, it's the same thing as me ultimately putting a 7 there. So I'm passing a 7 in to this A. When I go to print A, this A will then, for this particular call to the function, become a 7. And it'll print out a 7. Okay, so variables are always placeholders. Before they're used, they boil down to the value they contain. All right, so even though I'm saying I'm passing a variable named C here, even when it was an A, this is a common thing that beginning programmers struggle with, is that this A has anything to do with, where's my stupid func? There it is. Has anything to do with that A. To a human being, they just look the same. Okay? They're both completely independent variables. And The reality is that this guy never gets passed in as a variable named A. He will boil down to his value, which is 7. So what's actually getting passed in here is a 7. And 7 is getting stored inside of this local variable, a variable that's local to the stupid func scope, called A. And then when I go to print out A, a variable always resolves to its most local definition. So the most local definition of that guy is this one right here, instead of this guy down here. It will resolve A to its value, whatever value was passed in. In this case, it would be a 7, and it'll print out a 7. Does that make sense? So variables always resolve to the value they contain before we actually use them. So there's our 7 that printed out from that guy. All right, now last class, so we're going to kind of put a couple of our pieces together here. If you remember, I created a list, something like that, and then I said, what was it? Delete LST1, then print LST. So this is bucket 0, this is bucket 1, this is bucket 2. So this should remove permanently from list bucket 1, leaving me with the list 1, 3. Okay? So this is the syntax for deleting from a list a specific bucket. Make sense? So for next class, what we want to write let's do remove consonants. Okay, so this guy is going to take a list as a parameter and removes, oh, come on, all consonants from that list, returning the modified list. So the list A, well, let's do hello. That list, when passed in, should become that list. The list with all the consonants removed from it. Make sense? So this is similar to what we did with strings, with the difference here being we still need to recognize consonants. You might find that find function helpful again. Remember, go back to one of your other tools, but actually remove them from the list this time. Sound good? All right, I will see everybody on Monday. And I'll just, let's see, what code should I put up there?
So you said the exam is Wednesday. Next Wednesday, right?
Yep.
Do we have class Friday then? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go over the exam and then we'll keep cooking.
So I just saw on Blackboard that